Hello neighbors, it's Brad here at Etrailer, and today we're taking a look and installing the CURT Front Hitch on a 2015 Toyota 4Runner Limited. Now this is what your hitch is going to look like when it's installed on your 4Runner, and it's going to be pretty well completely visible, but it sits perfectly underneath the bottom fascia to where you still have full accessibility of the 2" by 2" receiver tube opening, as well as the nice and large safety chain loops. So that makes it super easy to be able to load things up, and also it sticks out just enough to where it's not going to be, intruding too far forward, but you're still going to be able to get those accessories in place and usable based on the taper of the bumper. So it works out really well for usability. Now, whatever accessory you load into your front hitch is going to stay in place with a 5/8 pin and clip. Now, this is not included with the front hitch, but a lot of times your accessories will come with one. If you want to pick up a locking pin and clip, we have those available here at Etrailer, and that's really nice if you plan on leaving accessories on the front of your vehicle. You can lock that in place, and it's a good way to deter people from just walking by and taking your accessories with them. Now the safety chains are rather large here, and that's nice for being able to hook up, a large clevis hook, a standard safety chain S-loop or recovery straps on here, and that's really what you're going to be using it for more than likely. So having it nice and open sure makes it very usable. They are pretty robust here. And as far as, capacities, this is a little bit different because you're not towing a trailer, but it's going to kind of operate in the same fashion. So making sure that you're following the guidelines is going to keep you safe. So as far as a gross trailer weight rating, if you're pushing a trailer around, it's going to be 3,500 pounds. And that's going to be the weight of the trailer plus the accessories loaded onto it. The tongue weight is going to be the downward pressure that's put on the front hitch. So anything that's suspended, whether it be, a cargo carrier or a bike rack, and that's going to come in at 350 pounds. Now your straight line pull, if you put a winch on here, is going to be 9,000 pounds. And keep in mind at different angles that does change, but a straight pull is going to be 9,000, and predominantly that's what you're going to be using a front hitch for. The possibilities are really kind of endless when it comes to a front hitch. A lot of times people will think of a winch or a snowplow, which you would be correct, but even putting in something like a tow shackle for recovery, a large hook, and we've even had people that use these for recovery, pulling tree stumps out or just becoming an anchor point. So really, whatever you want to put on here, it's going to work out great. Ball mounts are nice too. If you have trailers that you need to park in tight spots, you can put a ball mount on the front, easily navigate it. So again, you can even put a bike rack on the front if that's really what you're looking to do. So it's really up to you. Just make sure that you're taking a look at those capacities and not overloading it. Something that's going to be really important is making sure that your accessories are going to work with the front hitch location. So from the center of the hitch pin hole to the furthest point of the fascia, we're coming in right about 6 inches or so. So it might be something worthwhile if you want to make sure that it's going to clear the bumper. If you have something that's going to be like a bike rack or a cargo carrier that can stow, making sure that you can actually get that to stow is going to be important. So take a measurement of those shanks and make sure that it's going to work with your vehicle. As far as ground clearance goes, it's not the highest ground clearance you could find on a front hitch by any means. But right now we're coming in about 11.5 inches, and that's going to be important. If you're going to be moving trailers with this, you do want to get a ball mount that's going to work with that, so you can measure the coupler of the trailer and then compare it with that height and determine that rise or drop necessary. When it comes to installation, it's actually really easy to do. It's easier than doing a rear hitch, I would think. Really, the hardest part is going to be what kind of condition is your 4Runner in, because you're going to be using 4 points where there's going to be factory weld nuts that are in place. So those threads can get corroded with rust. It depends on where your vehicle's lived its whole life. And if that's the case, you may have to get a tap and die set to kind of clear those out for your hardware to go in. But other than that, step by step, it's really not too difficult to do. But if you watch the video and decide maybe this is beyond your scope, you don't have the place to do it, the tools to do it, or even the want to do it, you can reach out to our dealer locator to find someone close to you to get your front hitch installed. For you DIYers, stick around. To get our front hitch installed, the first thing that we're going to need to do is remove a plastic underbody panel on each side. Now it's going to be bolted into a few different spots. Ours originally had a big bull bar up front that they're going to be replacing with a front hitch to get a little bit more usability out of the front of their 4Runner. So we don't have ours today, but it should just be a series of screws. You'll take those out and later trim if you need to get that back up in place. Since we don't have ours, we're gonna move right along, and that's gonna be starting to tackle some of the spots where we're gonna be removing hardware and also putting new hardware in. And depending on the condition of your vehicle underside, this is a Midwest car. It spent its life in Colorado as well, so rust is gonna be pretty apparent. And a lot of that's going to come down to having weld nuts. So those spots are going to be where our hardware goes into place, and if that's all corroded with rust, this could be a little bit more of a difficult installation, but it all depends on the condition of your vehicle. So what I'd recommend is getting some penetrating oil and spray that down, let it work in there first before trying to attack any of the hardware. Now it's going to be the same on each side of the vehicle, and where we're going to be going is this lower bolt where you see where the frame rail ends. This bolt is going to be removed. So if you spray this in the weld nut area and allow that to kind of loosen it up, you're probably going to need a breaker bar to kind of knock that loose, but we'll be removing this. We're not going to be reusing the hardware, so don't worry too much. Just make sure that you get this out. The other weld nut spot is going to be located on the frame rail right above your tow hook. So you'll find a spot right here. And what I do is I'm going to hit it all with the penetrating oil, let it soak, and then take our new hardware that's going to feed into each of those spots, or at least this one for now, and pass that through. The same goes for once we get that bolt removed, get our new hardware to pass in easily. You don't want to be raising up your front hitch only to fumble with those holes. You want to make sure that it's able to be passed through. And worst case scenario, if it's really bad, you can use a toothbrush to kind of scrub that out, but you might need to use a tap to clear that out, again, depending on the condition of your vehicle. Now, once you let it soak for a little bit, we're going to be removing that bottom bolt. It's going to be a 14mm socket to get that knocked off. Now, I will say, probably use a breaker bar instead of using an impact. We don't want to damage the hardware. We want to make sure we can remove it in one piece. Now, I've already kind of knocked mine loose and cleared out the threads a little, so mine's going to come out fairly easily here. Now, if you need to get a thread tap to clear out the holes that these came through, an M10 by 1.25 is going to be what you use. If you need to tap out the bottom, it's going to be an M12 by 1.25. And once you clear it out, the best way to check to make sure that you're good, again, is just take your new hardware and run that through. It should go fairly easily. You might get a little bit of resistance, but the main thing is just by hand, you can at least get it started. That'll make it a lot easier. Now with an extra set of hands, we're going to get our front hitch raised up in place. And it's kind of important how we get it set, because the curved plate with this square opening or rectangle opening, that's going to sit on the top of the tow hook. So just make sure you get that in place. This is going to go where that bolt was removed from the top, and these side ones are going to be where we have those weld nuts. So you can really choose any of them to hold them in place. I think the side ones are going to be easiest, and that's going to require the middle-sized bolt with the conical tooth washer in place. Now, make sure you get the right size washer. It should only fit this bolt. And we're going to just raise it up in place and get these started to support it. So you will have to go in at a slight angle to get this over the tow hook, and it's going to get a little bit tight here, so just kind of take your time here to kind of get this all in place. And then once it starts to align, just get your bolts started on each side, and that'll make it a lot easier for us to get the rest of the hardware in place. Now, something that's a little unique on ours, because we had the bull bar, you can see where it pressed against this plastic for quite a while, and it's kind of conformed to that, and it made our front hitch actually fit pretty well. You may not have that same convenience. So to remove this, it's just a plastic push pin, and then there's just a series of clips that you can pop this out. I would highly suggest taking that out while getting your hitch up in place. You might be able to trim that to clear along with that plastic if you had to remove it under here. That's completely up to you, but in our case, I didn't actually have to remove it. Just know that kind of looking at the way that this is sitting, I do have a feeling that that's going to need to be trimmed or just remove this entirely. Now that our hitch is supported by our bolts that went into the side weld nuts, we can get the top ones where we remove that factory bolt, and we're going to be using new hardware again with the conical tooth washer. Just make sure that the teeth on the washer bite into the metal or have it facing towards the hitch, and we'll get those threaded in as well. Now, in order to get this to line up, you may have to push up on the front hitch just to kind of take some of the stress of it kind of leaning down to get those threads started. But whatever you need to do to get it started, that's what we're looking for. And then our large carriage bolt, that's going to feed up. It's a little tight here, so you may have to kind of finagle this a little bit with your fingers. But we'll get that to pass through. Make sure it goes through the factory tow hook. And once you get that passed through, we have a spacer block. That's going to go around here, which is going to sandwich around our tow hook. And then you can use the block to hold tension on those threads to where you can get your serrated flange nut started. And then we'll just make sure that we have all of our hardware started by hand on both sides. Now we're going to start by snugging down all of our hardware. We're going to come back with a torque wrench a little bit later on, so you really don't need to get crazy here. We're just going to get everything nice and snug. And to start, I'm going to do the top bolts where we remove that factory bolt, and it's going to be a 17 millimeter socket, so I'll get those snugged down first. To snug down our bolts that go into our frame rail, that's going to be a 19 millimeter socket. Now our large bolt is going to be a 15/16 on the nut, so we'll get that snugged down. Now with everything snugged down, we're going to use those same sockets and go back with our torque wrench. Torque settings are found in the instruction manual. This is going to be important, especially you're going to be putting stuff on the front. You want to make sure that long term it's going to stay in place. But when it comes to weld nuts, it's especially important because you can over torque them and cause damage to those to where it's not going to be a solid mount anymore. So the torque wrench is going to make sure you're going to get it perfectly dialed in. Now if you need a torque wrench, we have them available here at Etrailer. You can generally go to an auto parts store and rent one for free. But make sure that you're changing your torque for each of the different sets of hardware. And when you get to these lower ones, it's a pretty high torque setting. More than likely, you're going to need a 1/2 inch torque wrench to accomplish that. So you may need to get a larger one. If you are renting one, I would recommend getting the 1/2 inch. But we'll get these all torqued down. Now with all the hardware torqued down, you've officially installed your front hitch. Those plastic panels that you removed in the first step, there are diagrams in the instruction manual that'll show you how to trim those out. You can use a number of different cutting methods, but that way you can get it to fit back in place. You can get all your hardware put back in place for that. And then all that's left to do is load up your accessories on your front hitch and hit the road. And that was a look at installation of the CURT Front Hitch on a 2015 Toyota 4Runner Limited. Now, if you're looking at getting this front hitch on your 4Runner or you already have one installed, please leave a comment or question below, and that way we can really answer the questions and also let people know how they're using their front hitch, and it just helps neighbors like you get the best product for their vehicle, and that way they're happy with their purchase. My name's Brad. Thanks for watching.